You open your banking app. It is the end of the month, and your balance is much lower than you expected. You scroll through the transactions. A quick takeout meal here, a subscription renewal there, a late-night online order you barely remember placing. None of these purchases were huge, but together they have quietly drained your account. This is the modern money paradox. We have more financial tools than ever before, automated trackers, colorful budget apps, and complex spreadsheets, yet we feel less in control. The problem is not the math. The problem is the speed. Modern spending is entirely frictionless. You tap a piece of plastic, double-click your phone, or let a payment renew in the background. Money moves faster than your ability to notice it leaving. Japanese money habits take the exact opposite approach. Instead of trying to track money after it is already gone, they force you to slow down long enough to see it in the present moment. Today, we are going to look at how to build quiet wealth and manage your money without a single spreadsheet. Most people think they have a tracking problem. They tell themselves that if they just set up the perfect Excel file, or if they just download that new budgeting app, everything will fall into place. But when you try these tools, you often abandon them after a few weeks. Why? Because you are trying to solve an awareness problem with a mathematical solution. Complex tracking tools are excellent at organizing numbers, but they are terrible at changing behavior. They only show you the damage after the money has already left your life. In a world where spending is entirely frictionless, your brain simply does not register the loss. This is where Japanese financial principles step in. Instead of adding more complicated technology, these habits rely on intentional friction. They are not about living a life of strict deprivation or punishing yourself for buying a coffee. They are about building a calm financial operating system. They give you a lens to look at your money with clarity rather than anxiety. If your bank account does not reflect your hard work, you are not failing. You just need to change the speed at which you interact with your finances. The foundation of this approach often traces back to a system popularized in Japan in 1904 called Kakeibo. Translated simply as a household financial ledger, Kakeibo was originally designed to help people take control of their domestic economy. But the true power of Kakeibo is not the paper it is written on. It is grounded in a core principle of behavioral finance. Friction changes behavior. When you tap a card, the transaction is instant. However, when you are forced to pause and physically acknowledge a purchase, you create a necessary gap between the impulse to buy and the reality of the cost. The cultural lesson here is simply about reclaiming your attention. Modern financial culture tells us that faster is always better. But when it comes to keeping the money you earn, slowing down is your ultimate advantage. The first habit to build this quiet wealth requires making your money visible again. Think about the last time you bought a coffee or ordered something online. You probably did not hand over cash, you simply tapped a screen. The modern money problem is that spending has become entirely invisible. Kakeibo asks you to do the exact opposite. The visible cost of frictionless spending is obvious. You spend more than you meant to, but the hidden cost is much more dangerous. You lose the emotional connection to the hours of your life you traded to earn that money. The psychological trap here is convenience. We are taught that convenience is a luxury, but in finance, it is often a tax you pay with your future freedom. The system fix is not to track every single penny. Instead, introduce physical friction for your impulse purchases. If you want to buy something outside your planned expenses, physically write it down on a piece of paper first. Quiet wealth often begins when money stops being an automatic reflex and becomes a conscious choice. Once you start paying attention, you will realize how many of those impulses naturally fade away, which leads to the second shift. Categorizing your money by purpose, not just by type. If you open a standard budgeting app, you will likely see your spending divided into 20 different categories. This modern approach is exhausting. The visible cost is that managing your money feels like a second job, so you procrastinate. The hidden cost is severe decision fatigue. The psychological trap is the false belief that complexity equals control. Traditional Japanese budgeting approaches this differently by organizing money into just 4 simple pillars: needs, wants, culture, and the unexpected. Needs keep you alive. Wants bring temporary joy. Culture feeds your mind, like books or meaningful experiences. And the unexpected covers life's surprises. This system forces you to look at the true purpose of your spending. The fix is to radically simplify your financial view. Look at your main expenses and ask what purpose they served. Financial peace is rarely found in a complicated system. Quiet wealth is built on systems that are simple to maintain. With a simpler system in place, the third habit asks you to find the shadow price of convenience. You finish a long day of work and open a food delivery app. The delivery fee is only $5. The modern money problem is that our lives are filled with these tiny, frictionless convenience charges. Here we can look through the lens of motenai, a Japanese concept expressing a sense of regret over waste. The visible cost is just a few dollars a day, but the hidden cost is the shadow price of that convenience. The opportunity cost of what that money could have built if it had been directed toward your freedom. The psychological trap is microspending blindness. Because the amounts are so small, our brains do not register them as a threat. The system fix is to audit the total cost of your convenience. Pick just one recurring convenience cost and delete it today. Quiet wealth is not just about what you earn. It is also about the waste you actively refuse to pay for. Once you stop leaking money on waste, the fourth habit is defining your enough before you spend. Modern financial culture operates on a simple rule. If you make more, you should spend more. We upgrade our lifestyles to match every pay bump. A powerful way to counter this is through hara hachi bu, the cultural practice of eating until you are 80% full. Translated to your finances, it means knowing your point of enough. The visible cost of maxing out your lifestyle is having zero cash left at the end of the month. The hidden cost is that you are living on the edge of risk. The psychological trap is lifestyle inflation, where we spend money to prove we are successful. The system fix is to standardize your living expenses at 80% of your income. Build your life around that number and let the remaining 20% act as your buffer. Enough is not failure or deprivation. Enough is the exact place where freedom begins. Finding your point of enough requires you to look at your past spending, which introduces the fifth habit. Reflecting without guilt. There is a common habit among people overwhelmed by money. They simply stop looking at their bank accounts. The modern money problem is avoidance. This brings us to the concept of hansei, which is the practice of honest, non-judgmental self-reflection. The visible cost of avoiding your finances is late fees and growing debt, but the hidden cost is willful blindness. When you refuse to look, you slowly destroy your financial confidence. The psychological trap keeping you here is the shame cycle. We feel bad about spending, so we avoid our accounts, which makes us anxious. So we spend more to temporarily feel better. The system fix is to schedule a 15-minute financial review at the end of each week. Look at your numbers purely as data, searching only for patterns. Quiet wealth is understanding that clarity heals financial anxiety much faster than a higher salary ever could. As you stop judging your own past, the sixth principle asks you to unplug from the financial timeline of others. Every day your feed is flooded with people buying new cars or upgrading their homes. The modern money problem is that we are constantly pressured to match the milestones of our peers. Here we can learn from Ubai Tori, the Japanese idea that every flower blooms in its own time. The visible cost of ignoring this is taking on debt just to keep up appearances. The hidden cost is tragic. You end up living someone else's life using your own hard-earned money. The psychological trap is status spending. We buy things we do not even really want, simply to signal that we are doing well. The system fix is to ruthlessly unplug from these external triggers, mute the accounts that make you feel like you are falling behind, and focus entirely on your own financial reality. Money becomes incredibly light when it is no longer exhausted from trying to prove your worth. Protecting your own financial reality leads naturally to the seventh habit, which is saving before life spends it. Most people wait until the end of the month to save whatever money's left over. The modern money problem is that life will always find a reason to spend whatever cash is available. This brings us to chokin, the Japanese practice of purposeful saving. The visible cost of waiting until the end of the month is that your savings balance constantly sits at zero. The hidden cost is that you remain permanently trapped in a stressful paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. The psychological trap is the illusion that next month will somehow magically be cheaper. It rarely is. The system fix is to completely reverse the order of your spending. Set up an automatic transfer to your savings or long-term investment account the exact day your paycheck arrives. Quiet wealth is understanding that paying your future self first is the highest form of self-respect. Protecting that future requires one final mental shift, which is the eighth habit, letting small tweaks compound. When people finally decide to fix their finances, they usually try to change everything at once. The visible cost is that this extreme restriction collapses within a week. The hidden cost is much more damaging. You lose trust in your own ability to manage money. This is where Kaizen, the philosophy of continuous small improvement, changes the game. The psychological trap is the all-or-nothing mentality. We wrongly believe that if we cannot save a massive amount, we should not bother saving at all. The system fix is to make just one tiny financial tweak at a time. Cancel one unused subscription today or cook one extra meal at home this week. Let those small wins slowly build your confidence. Quiet wealth does not require a sudden, massive leap in your income. It simply requires a slightly better financial system today than you had yesterday. Before this starts to sound like another video telling you to throw away your smartphone and live a life of complete deprivation, let's pause here. That is not the point of these habits. The goal of using concepts like Kakeibo or Kaizen is not to shame you for buying a coffee. Modern financial culture is designed to make money slip through your fingers as quietly as possible. These Japanese principles act as a circuit breaker. They give your money a clear direction rather than letting it vanish into the noise. This is not about being cheap, it is about being awake. Here is your action blueprint for the next 30 days. You do not need to buy a fancy ledger or start tracking every single penny by hand. That will only lead to burnout. Instead, pick just one spending category that you know is currently leaking money. For the next 30 days, intentionally introduce physical friction to this specific category. Before you double-click to pay, take a small piece of paper and physically write down the item and the cost. Force the transaction to slow down. At the end of the week, sit down for 15 minutes and practice Hansei. Look at what you wrote without guilt. Once you identify the leaking money, apply Choken. Set up an automatic transfer so that exact amount moves directly into a long-term investment account before you spend it next month. Start with one category and let the system do the heavy lifting. If you open your banking app at the end of the month and feel a sense of dread, remember that the solution is not a more complicated system. Tracking tools organize the past, but they do not actively change your present behavior. True quiet wealth is not about having a flawless Excel file. It is about building a habit that forces you to be awake when your money moves. By applying habits like Kakeibo to physically slow down your spending, you stop letting frictionless convenience silently drain your future. If this video helped you see your money differently, leave a comment below and tell me which spending category you're going to start tracking first. And be sure to subscribe for more videos on quiet wealth and minimalist money rules. This video is for educational purposes only and is not personal financial advice. Financial rules, taxes, pensions, and investment products vary by country. Always consider your own situation and speak with a qualified professional when needed.